Let's now take a look at an algorithm that we can use for sorting the data in an array into a particular order. Now, there are many different sorting algorithms, and each one varies in its efficiency. This means that some sorting algorithms execute fewer amounts of operations in order to perform the sort. So some algorithms are more efficient than others. We won't be going into analyzing the efficiency of algorithms in this course, but we will take a look at a very simple algorithm that we can use to sort our data. In this lesson, we're going to learn about an algorithm called the selection sort, which is fairly easy to implement, and this will allow us to sort integers from lowest to highest. This algorithm basically compares all of the values in the array to find the lowest value, and moves it to the front of the array, swapping the value's position, and continues this process until the array is sorted from lowest to highest. So let's switch into Eclipse, and I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to name this selection sort. That's with a capital S for selection and a capital S for sort. And this is going into my array algorithms package. And make sure to check the checkbox here to create your main method, and we'll hit finish. Now inside of the main method, I'm just going to change the comment to say selection sort. And let's now create an array of integers, which will be unordered and with varying numbers so that we can sort the array. I'm just going to name mine nums, and I'm going to use the curly bracket syntax to create my array. So let's just insert some numbers here. I'm going to use 8, 2, 5, 6, 1, 9, and 10. There we go. So what we want to do is sort these integers inside of this array to order them from lowest to highest using the selection sort algorithm. To do this, we'll use two for loops. The first loop will grab the first value in the array, index 0, and the second loop will always be one number ahead of the first for loop. So it's going to grab the second value of the array, index 1. That way we can compare two different numbers from the array to see which one is lowest using an if statement. So let's create our first for loop. We'll create our I variable and just set that equal to 0. And now our condition is going to be while I is less than the length of our nums array minus 1. The reason we use the length of the array minus 1 is because our inner loop, which we'll create in just a moment, will always be one number ahead of this for loop. So we don't need to go to the end of the array in this first loop because the inner for loop will handle that last value for us. Now we just need to increment I. Now let's create our nested for loop inside of our first loop here. I'm going to name the loop variable j, and we're going to set its value to be the value of the first loop's I variable plus 1. This will allow this loop to always be one index ahead of the first loop. And now our condition is going to be while j is less than the length of our nums array, and then we'll just increment j. So now we have our two for loops, and our first loop here will loop over our array, and it'll start at an index of 0. Then our inner for loop will start at index 0 plus 1 because it's using the first loop's I variable. So the first time both of these loops execute, I will be equal to 0 and j will be equal to 1. Then the second time the loop executes, I will be equal to 1 and j will be equal to 2. By doing this, we'll be able to compare each value within our array to sort them from lowest to highest. Let's now use an if statement to compare the values in our array, and we'll use our I and j variables as our indexes. So we're going to check if nums I is greater than the value of nums j. So on the first loop, we're checking if the value of index position 0, which is being held in the I variable, is greater than the value of index position 1, which is being held in the j variable. Then on the second loop, we're checking if the value of index position 1 is greater than index position 2, because remember, these are going to increment as the loops execute. So now if this if statement evaluates to true, we just need to swap these values' positions within the array. For example, if we take a look at our array above, on the first loop, it's going to take index 0, which is integer value 8 right here. Then the inner loop will take index 1, which is the integer value 2. It's going to compare to see if 8 is greater than 2, and if this evaluates to true, we'll swap their positions. So since 8 is greater than 2, we're going to move the integer 2 into index 0, and then we'll move integer 8 into index 1. So it'll swap their positions. So 2 will be at the beginning, and 8 will be in the second slot. So that would be the first time the loop executes. Then on the second execution, this time it's going to check if index 1, which holds the value 8, is greater than the integer 5, which is in index 2. If this evaluates to true, it'll then swap their positions again. So in this case, 8 is greater than 5, so it would swap them. It would move 5 into index 1 and 8 into index 2. And so this process continues until the entire array is sorted. Pretty cool, right? So I'm just going to undo these changes. And now we just need to implement the code for swapping the values. To do that, we're just going to stick the value of what was in index position j into index position I, and then stick the value of what was in index position I into index position j. So that would look something like this. We use nums I, and we give it the value of whatever is in nums j. Then we take nums j, and we give it the value of whatever was in nums I. But you might notice that this won't work properly, and that's because we're overwriting the value of index position I here on this first line. So then when we try to swap index I into j, it's just going to duplicate the same number, because index position I now holds j's value. So we need to create a variable to hold the original value of what was in I, so that we can swap it into j down here. So at the top, let's create a new integer. I'm just going to name it ival, short for i's value. And we're going to give this the value of whatever is in nums I. And now we have a reference to what was originally in index position I, using this ival variable. So after we swap j into I, we can now swap I into j by using our ival variable instead. And that's it. So our loops will loop over our entire array, comparing each value and swapping their positions to sort these integers from lowest to highest. Let's now print out the array to the console so that we can see that the sort has worked. So outside of our for loop, let's use system.out.println, and let's use the arrays class, and we'll call its toString method, and we'll just print out our nums array to the console. Now I did want to point out here that when using the arrays class in Eclipse, Eclipse automatically imports this class for us. So you can see that it's inserted this import statement at the top of the file. All right, so make sure to save your file, and let's run the program. And great, you can see that our array has been sorted from lowest to highest. Next up, we're going to learn about an algorithm for finding a min or max value from within an array. But that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next lesson.